Hey everybody, welcome to another video. This is going to be a bit of a different kind of video today because of two reasons. The first reason is that I'll get asked this question quite a lot and I think I should probably make a video on it so as I can point people towards it, because when I'm live streaming and things it's a little bit awkward to kind of tell my life story sort of thing. And the second reason is that I recently, or as recently as 3 days ago, I was leaning over to pick something up in the back garden and I've done something, I've pulled my back out and I'm finding it difficult to sit down for more than 20 minutes to 30 minutes without being in complete agony. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dakota, but I prefer for you to call me Philip. Dakota is just a nickname which I generated for myself years ago because I was doing programming. I thought I was the shit and I called myself the Coder. So yeah, that's where the nickname comes from. But basically I repair electronics for a living. I run my own business, I work from home, and I want to go over in this video how I went from basically a little bit of a scumbag to basically running my own business and providing for my family, things like that. I'm quite proud of where I've come to in the past 5 or 6 years, and especially compared to where I was back then and things like that. So one of the very, very weird misconceptions that people have got about me is drug user. It's not true. Never taken drugs. That's a lie. I tried cannabis, didn't like it, puked, never done it again. Not interested in it. So yes, I've got bad teeth. That's for a completely different reason. But yeah, I'm not a drug user, and I never have been, and I never will be, because I completely despise them. But that being said, each to their own. Do what you want, I don't care. But I do want to touch over how I went from basically being a low-life criminal to where I am today. And that is obviously running what I consider as a somewhat successful business, I would like to imagine. So a lot of you will probably already know this. I've been to prison. But one thing that a lot of people will not know is that I've been to prison twice. I went to prison when I was 15 and I spent my 16th birthday in prison, and I also went to prison when I was 25. So not that long ago. I'm 34 now, 35 this year. And I spent quite a considerable amount of time in prison the second time. I did just over a year in actual prison. Let me go back to 2004, 2005, where I was getting in a lot of trouble. And I was basically stealing from shops. Like I said, I've never done drugs. I was stealing from shops. I was doing a little trick with payphones where I would basically block up the coin return slot and it would steal people's money as it was supposed to be ejected by the payphone. I know, it's not stuff I'm proud of, but it's stuff I've done, and I'm not going to try and hide anything that I've done, because everything I've done in the past has made me who I am today. It's shaped the morals that I've got today, right? And that is what people ultimately need to remember, is that the things that we do in the past do shape us for the future. And some people take a turn for the worse. Some people take that natural progression of getting worse. Some people want to better themselves, and some people want to do better long term. But that being said, back in 2004, 2005, I was an absolute little shit. Did not give a damn. I did not give a damn about, the consequences to my actions. I never hurt anyone. I never went around, beating people up or robbing from people, traumatizing them, victimizing them, anything like that. That wasn't who I am. I'm not a fighter. I absolutely hate fighting. I've had probably 5 fights in my entire life. I didn't really give a damn about myself. I didn't give a damn about ending up in prison because I thought I was untouchable. And like I said, a lot of the stuff I was doing was against, businesses mainly, where I would, steal from shops and then sell it to people who I knew, people from pubs, people from amusement centres, because my mum was a gambler and stuff like that. I was basically just stealing to survive. We didn't have much money growing up, and in fact we had hardly any money. My mum was a gambler, my dad was a drug user, which is why I do pretty much despise drugs. And yeah, that kind of made me need to go out and earn my own money. So I was working on, you know, market stalls and stuff like that. There was actually a very, very generous guy who knew my history. He knew I was a little bit of a bad lad, and he gave me a chance. And, you know, I never did anything to cross him, ever. He gave me a chance, and I made sure he didn't regret it. He gave me an opportunity to work on a market stall. I was being paid £10 on the morning and £10 on the evening. Wasn't a lot of money, but I was 14. And £20 a day to a 14-year-old, you're a baller, right? So anyway, fast forward to 2005, and a so-called friend of mine, for some reason, he got on the wrong side of me, or, you know, we had some sort of a falling out. And the one day, stupidly, I did think to myself, you know what? He's fast asleep and he's flat. I mean, he was a little bit older than me. He's fast asleep and he's flat. I'm going to go and steal his PlayStation. It was a PS1, or rather PlayStation 1, the first console. I'm going to go and steal his PlayStation while he's asleep. He woke up, he caught me, he chased me down the stairs. A few days later, the police knocked on my door and I got arrested. And they did me for aggravated burglary dwelling, because the guy was 16. He was in one of those, you know, hostels where they send young people when they get kicked out by the parents and stuff. So basically, I got arrested for aggravated burglary dwelling. The aggravated part was because he was in. The dwelling part was because he was classed as a minor, because he was under 18 and there was no one else over 18 living at the property. And the burglary was because I stole his PlayStation. So ultimately for that, they give me, I think it was, you know, a youth offending order, where I would have to go and see a youth offending officer every few days, every week or something. And I would also have to pay a fine, which ultimately my mum ended up having to pay. But they gave me this order, which I never complied with. And like I said, I didn't give a damn. I thought I was untouchable. You're never going to send me to prison. Haha, I'm untouchable. Wasn't true. I breached that order 3 times and they said, you know what, we've had enough of you. You can see what it's like inside. And that was the first time I went to prison. So I went to a youth offenders institute at 15 years old, and it was, I think it was September 2005. It was either 2004 or 2005, but it was just before my 16th birthday. I think it might have been 2004. I spent 2 months in and I got out a week after my 16th birthday. So I spent one of the most important birthdays of a teenager's life locked up 23 hours a day. And there was nothing I could do about it. From that point, I stayed out of trouble till I was about 19, I think I was. And then I got arrested a couple more times for stupid things. One of the things that I got arrested for, the most serious thing I got arrested for at 19, was I got arrested after I got drunk. I was out at, you know, there was some sort of a birthday party, and I got into an altercation with a guy because I found out he was, let's just put it this way, he was, I'm not going to mention the word, but he did things to women. That's all I'm going to say. I can't mention the word because I'll get banned from YouTube. He did things to women. So I got into a fight with him. I beat him up. After that happened, I realised, oh shit, the police are probably going to come. I need to get the hell out of here. So I walked home. And at that time, I was living in the same building that I'd been sent to prison for. It was called Sandwell House in Walsall. It was it's like a youth hostel for under 21s, homeless under 21s. I was homeless. I got put into there, and basically that's where I was living. So I was walking back home, and there was a Mercedes garage nearby, and I was still angry, very, very, very angry, and I caused £110,000 worth of damage to the Mercedes forecourt. I smashed a big pane of glass, probably bigger than the wall on my house, and I also smashed up 2 cars. I wrote off 2 cars completely with my hands. I woke up the next morning in the police cells, and I'd been arrested for criminal damage and a couple of other crimes which I can't remember. There were a few charges, I think 4 or 5 charges. I was incredibly lucky to not go to prison, but ultimately the judge, it went to Crown Court, which, if you're from the UK, you'll know that's quite serious. The Crown Court, or the Magistrates Court, cannot sentence you to over 2 years. It has to be referred to Crown. So I was looking at quite a bit of time for that particular night, just because of stupid drunken mistakes. And basically, the judge, he heard my story, he heard why I was angry that night, and he took lenience on me. And ultimately, he gave me, I think it was 150 hours community service, something like a £600 fine or something like that, along with, I got forced to take an alcoholics awareness class, or alcohol awareness class, even though I'm not an alcoholic. I very rarely drink, but I got made to take some alcoholics awareness class. He did pretty much everything he could without sending me to prison, but he did throw the book at me, and that gave me a wake-up call. I thought, you know what, this is where I need to change my life. And I did. I really did, or at least I tried, up until I was 23 or 24 years old. Well, 23 years old. By the way, I should mention as well that when I was 17 or 18, I used to go onto the market selling bootleg DVDs and making good money on it. Never got caught for it at that time, but I used to go on the market selling bootleg DVDs, and I stopped it because I moved into this flat and my life was getting back on track and stuff like that. And apart from that one hiccup with getting arrested while I was drunk, I was fine. You know, I was working. At that point, I'd got a job at DX, which it used to be called Night Freight at the time. Basically, that was when I realised, after that court case, I need to turn my life around. And like I said, I actually did. Up until I was 24. I passed my driving test in 2012, when I was 23, I think. May the 1st, 2012, I passed my driving test, and I split up with my then girlfriend around the end of the year or the middle of the year. I can't exactly remember when, but it is relevant, I promise. But I split up with my girlfriend sometime that year in 2012. 2012, yeah. And basically, I ended up moving to a flat in Bloxwich. So I lived with my sister for a while, stayed there while I found somewhere to live, got somewhere with the local council. They gave me a 1-bedroom flat, and I was back to square one. I'd lost my job I was working then at Interlink, which is now DPD. It's a courier company. My stepdad was at the time the supervisor. He got me the job just after I passed my test because I got my driving licence, and I was working as a courier. And then I split up with my girlfriend. I'm not very good at telling stories, by the way, everything's backwards. But I got my job as a courier, and while I was working, I got cheated on. And I was being cheated on while I was going out and providing for her child. Yeah, savage. I know. So I was bringing up her child, she cheated on me, we ended up splitting up, and little bit of a grave, bit of a downer on the story. I tried to hurt myself pretty bad. I crashed her car into a brick wall at 50 miles an hour, drove it straight through a brick wall, and I took a load of tablets, to be honest, because at the time I felt like my entire world had crashed. And when you're raising someone else's kid from birth, you lose your house, you lose your essentially your own kid because you brought up as your own. She called me dad. She saw me as a dad. She was only just gone one at the time, but my entire world crashed and I basically had nothing again. So I was living in this one bedroom flat, no future, no job, because I lost my job because of the breakup. Didn't lose my license because the police never got called. I just got took to hospital, dealt with it, moved on with my life, sort of thing. But I was living in this 1-bedroom flat, and I had nothing, had no job, no money, and it was at a point where really I couldn't even eat because I had no way to eat. I had no money. I had no money coming in at all. I had no benefits because they'd been stopped for some reason, and I had no job. Couldn't get a job because I couldn't afford to run a car. And the only jobs I could find were too far away to walk and too far away to even catch a bus. I've got no qualifications. I left school at 12 years old. I just had nothing, and I was literally back at rock bottom. The only way that I could see out of the hole was to break the law. And the way that I was breaking the law, I thought to myself, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to go down that route of, going out robbing people. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a fighter. I'm not a violent person. So there's two things I was doing, and I'm not proud of either. Well, I mean, the second thing's really not that bad, but the first thing I'm genuinely disgusted with myself by. I was actively scamming people on the internet, and I was scamming people for, it was basically eBay scams, to put it bluntly, selling stuff I didn't have. And, you know, I didn't really see any other way out at the time. All I could see was that criminal mindset that I'd always had. And I was, like I said, I was actively scamming people online. I was selling stuff on eBay and basically saying to people, no PayPal, bank transfer only. And people would bank transfer me. They would just send me like £600, £800, and I'd be golden for the next month. I'd be like, right, I'm all good now. I can get back on my feet. A month later, same again, because I'd spent the money, still didn't have a job, still didn't have any way to provide for myself, and still had no money coming in at all. So I'd go back to it again. I got arrested a couple of times for that, and ultimately I got community orders, got made to pay the money back and stuff like that, which I have since then paid the money back, but like I said, I'm genuinely not proud of it. I am really not. The second thing I did was I basically started pirating movies again. And at that point, again, because I got away with scamming a few people, and you know, I'd got community orders, I went back into that untouchable mindset. You can't send me to prison. I'm going to be here forever. Again, it didn't work, because even though I'd been arrested for it, so basically what I did was I was selling movies, you know, back on the market and stuff as I did, and then I wanted a movie that no one could get. Fast and Furious 6 or 5. Was it 5? It might have been 5. Yeah, basically I started selling movies again. I wanted the Fast movie. Couldn't get it, so I took a camcorder into the cinema and I recorded it myself. And at the time I was also running an online torrent site called BitBite. And it was doing quite well in terms of generating traffic. I had advertisements running on it and things like that. And I put it on there with my nickname. The same nickname that I linked to everything else online. My online dating profiles, Facebook, everything. I know, it's stupid. But at the time, I just didn't care. And at the time, I thought I was untouchable. And even after I got arrested for it, so they linked it back to me, obviously not exactly very hard. The Federation Against Copyright Theft made it like it was some complex operation. They Googled me. But anyway, I'm not glorifying any of this, but even after I got arrested, I continued to do it. I just didn't give a damn. I was selling movies to my probation officer. I just didn't care. Didn't care about me. I had nothing to look forward to. And I continued to sell them. I got arrested a second time. And then I realised, oh shit, I might be in some trouble. When I eventually consulted my solicitor after I'd been charged, my solicitor was blunt and said you could get 7 years. And that is when it sunk in. That is when I realised, oh fuck, I'm screwed. Yeah. So ultimately, I ended up getting 2 years and 9 months for conspiracy to defraud, which is absolute bullshit. But, you know, it was just movie piracy. But I ended up getting 2 years and 9 months for conspiracy to defraud. And basically I served 1 year and 2 months out of that. The rest of the half of the sentence, so the way it works in the UK, you do half your sentence in prison, half your sentence on prison licence, which is where you're back in the community, serving the rest of your sentence with conditions. And if you breach those conditions, you're instantly recalled. Not always, but instantly recalled most of the time. And I'll say not always, because I will tell you something in a minute. But ultimately, I did a year and 2 weeks in prison. And I didn't like it at all. And I really did want to change my life at that time. By that point, it was an adult prison. It's much different to a young offenders. A young offenders, you say something, you make a mom joke, you know, you get into a little bit of a scrap and that's the end of it. In adult prison, it can be calm as anything, and then next thing you know, you're standing on top of the tiers and you see someone get the face sliced open. And it really is that brutal. So I served 2 weeks in Blakenhurst, HMP Hull, and then I served a year in HMP Oakwood. I got out in, I think, August 2016, and in January 2017 I met Sarah. So I kept out of trouble. I did my 4.5 months on tag, which is an ankle monitor. I did 4.5 months on tag, and I already knew Sarah from my nieces went to the same school as her kids. So I met Sarah, and basically that was through my sister. We started talking. She'd recently split up with her boyfriend, who she got 2 kids with, and we ended up getting together just after I come off prison tag. So we ended up getting together in the January, and I think I moved in pretty much straight away because my mum had had enough of me. I was living back at my mum's at the time, and basically she'd had enough of me. So I ended up moving in pretty quickly. I think it was around about the March. I was still on prison licence, so I had freedom of movement. You know, I wasn't allowed to leave the country without telling my probation officer, but I had freedom of movement anywhere in the country. You know, if I wanted to go on a holiday, it was fine. Anything like that, I could stay out after hours and after 7 p.m, which is unlike what I could do when I was on tag. So I could go where I want, I could live where I want, as long as probation were aware of where I was. So fast forward a little bit, and I am pretty much in exactly the same situation. Because of my criminal record, I still don't have a job. I still couldn't get a job from getting out of prison. Genuinely, no one would hire me. But basically, when I got to a point where I had nothing, again, that criminal mindset kind of kicked in, and I didn't end up scamming people. I didn't end up, going back to selling movies and things like that. But I was living with Sarah. Now, you got to bear this in mind. I was living with Sarah. We had no money. We were both on benefits because she wasn't working either. And the money had been stopped. For whatever reason. I don't know what. But the money had been stopped. And all we had was, I think it was child benefit, I think it's called. I know it's just family allowance. I think it's child benefit now. I don't know because we don't claim it anymore, so I don't actually know what it is. We're not eligible for any of it, so I don't know what they're called these days. But I know it as family allowance because that's always what my mum called it. But Sarah was claiming those anyway, so I didn't deal with it. But times were tougher than ever. I'm not joking. They were tougher than ever because now not only did I have myself to look after, we had Sarah to look after, and at the time 2 children. I had literally £1 in my pocket, and that is all I had to my name, £1 British. And I went to the local supermarket, Morrison's, and I grabbed a bunch of reduced food stickers, like 5p and 10p stickers, and I stuck them on everything that I wanted to buy. Everything I needed to feed the kids. Meat, potatoes, everything. Even down to washing powder. Big boxes of Daz washing powder, and I was scanning them at the self-service checkouts and paying 10p for them. And I did that for quite some time, for a few weeks, until one Sunday I felt really, really, really nervous. And I went into Morrison's and I was doing my weekly shop. And Sarah's, I think it was cousin, caught me. Didn't know who I was, obviously, but she was doing a job either way. Had me arrested. And I was still on prison licence. The probation officer said to me, would you do this again? I said, what, in the exact same circumstances? And she said, yeah. I said, well, yeah, of course I would. Absolutely I would. And she just looked at me. Because she'd got to write it down. She just looked at me. I thought I was going to prison anyway because I was still on licence for, I think it was about 3 months or 4 months. So I thought I was going to go and serve the remainder of that 4 months in prison. So to me, it didn't matter what I said. So I was being truthful. And I just said, yeah, I would. In those exact circumstances, yeah, I would. And she just gave me this blank stare as if to say, I cannot believe you just said that in front of me. Honestly, I don't know how I didn't go to prison. But my probation officer, when it got to court, She was sat across the room from me, across the courtroom. She stood up when she was asked to by the magistrate. She addressed the court and she said, I don't want to recall him. This isn't related to his original offence. He did what he felt necessary to provide for his family. And that ultimately saved me from going back to prison. And that is ultimately where I decided, you know what? Enough is fucking enough. I cannot do this anymore. I cannot keep going through life, getting on the straight and narrow, and basically just fucking it all up for something stupid. I can't do it. So I started trying to put a plan together. We managed to get the benefits sorted. I managed to get a little bit of work here and there. I think I got a job back at DX. So I was doing some night work. I managed to get a bit of work. I was getting by. I was doing fine. Managed to get a car, and then fast forward to June 2017. Or was it May? It was either May or June 2017. And me and Sarah decided, Sarah had been out for the night. She'd been drinking with a friend for a friend's birthday. And we ultimately decided, you know what? Let's go for a drive. Let's just get up and go for a drive. The kids was at the dad's. I was on my own in the house because I don't really drink. Sarah come back from a night out. She was like, I'm bored. I was like, do you want to go for a drive? Yeah, let's go for a drive. I jumped on the motorway. I had my niece with me, my, at the time, 11-year-old niece. And she's just turned 18 a couple of days ago, bless her. But I had my 11, or was she 12? I don't know. It was 2017. She just turned 18 on the 16th of June, so work it out. I don't know. I'm terrible with birthdays. But anyway, I had my young niece with me. I was babysitting. And we went on the motorway and we decided, you know what, let's just go and drive to Manchester. It's a beautiful city. I like the look of the city at night. You know, I've been there a few times. Let's go and drive to Manchester. Jumped in the car, started driving to Manchester. We got to Stafford, which is about 20 miles from home, roughly, give or take, 10 miles. And I started to notice something wrong with the car. So I got off the car at services at junction 13. And I went to turn around. I thought to myself, you know what, the car's acting a little bit weird. It's struggling to go into gear, but if I just get back on the motorway and get back into fifth gear, I'll be okay. It's the middle of the night, there was nothing around, I'll be fine. As long as I can get back into fifth gear. And if I can't get back into fifth, because I was struggling to get from third to fourth, but I could get into fifth. So as long as I could get into fifth, I'd be okay. I could just limp along. Cruise along, you know, 60 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour, whatever. Stay in the left-hand lane, I'll be fine. You know, we've all tried to limp our car in the past, I'm sure. And the worst thing happened. The next thing I know, I heard a big crunch and a grind, and the car just slowly come to a stop. Dead stop in the middle of the motorway, between junction 12 and junction 13. And for anyone that's nearby to there, you'll know that that's a section of the motorway which has got no hard shoulder, so there's no lay-by. Well, there's a couple of parking lay-bys every half a mile, I think it is. But there's no hard shoulder, so there's no emergency breakdown shoulder, and there's no lighting. And it's a recipe for disaster. So immediately I got on the phone to the police. I got my niece to move over to the left-hand side of the car because she was behind my seat on the right-hand side. I got her to move over to the left-hand side of the car, and then I phoned the police. I dialed 999. As 999 answered, I said, I need every emergency service. I'm broken down on the motorway. And before I finished the sentence, I got hit. 70 mile an hour, a van speeding along on his mobile phone. Didn't see my hazard lights, didn't see my car, and he obliterated my side of the car. And I mean absolutely obliterated it. The van come in so far into my car that the centre pillar where the two doors join was gone. And because that was gone, my seatbelt was gone. I didn't have a seatbelt at that point. I had my seatbelt on, but it was flapping in the breeze. There was nothing protecting me. My niece luckily had got over to the other side and managed to put a seatbelt on. She was absolutely fine. If she hadn't, I can honestly say she would not be here today. And that's just ridiculous to even think, because 5 words saved a life. I ultimately nearly killed my niece by taking her out that night, but then 5 words saved her. You know, I've never spoke to anyone about how I felt that night, but the only thing that went through my mind that night was my niece, because ultimately, at that time, I didn't know whether she'd made it to the other side of the car. I didn't know if she put a seatbelt on, and I couldn't even look behind me. I didn't want to until I heard her scream. And yeah, I've never told Sarah how I felt that night. I never told my niece, I never told my sister, I never told my therapist, really. But, you know, my initial thought was she was dead, and I thought she'd been crushed, because I actually felt the van hit the back of my seat. And I know that sounds stupid, and it sounds like something you say, you know, in passing sort of thing, you know, oh, I felt it hit. No, I genuinely felt it hit my seat, and it went that far into my seat that it crushed me up against the steering wheel. But I genuinely didn't care about me at the time. I just didn't know whether my niece had survived, because she was sitting on my side of the car until I said those 5 words. And that was basically sit on the other side. He did save her life, and she would be dead if it wasn't for that, you know, for that one simple request, because the van would have crushed her. It would have crushed her into my seat. It probably would have killed me as well. But that's irrelevant. You know, my niece had a whole life, and that could have just as easily been taken away because of one silly little drive, because ultimately we didn't need to be out on the road that night. We didn't need to be there. The car shouldn't have broke down on the motorway that night, but it did. And like I said, the van come that far into the car, it hit with that much impact, that much force, that ultimately it crushed the centre pillar. And when it crushed the centre pillar, it took my seatbelt with it. It crushed my chair into the steering wheel. I ended up with a broken nose, or a crushed nose. It wasn't technically broken, it was crushed. I couldn't breathe through my nose at all for over a year. And I also ended up with 3 slip discs in my neck, which again pretty much put me out of commission in terms of work. The nose issue got fixed, or at least the majority of it. I still can't breathe sometimes, but the nose issue got fixed. I ended up having a little bit of my nose cut out in the middle on this side, so they could form a new airway. But the neck injury lives on, and it's lived on for 6 years now. I have to take painkillers every single day of my life, because I get constant headaches. I literally have a 24/7 headache. The painkillers just about subdue it because of the slip discs, and the doctors said they can't do anything about it. I've actually got an appointment this Thursday to try and get something done, because I've been living with this neck injury for too long, and I'm too young to not be able to have full mobility in my neck and to suffer with constant headaches. 34 years old, I shouldn't be suffering from it. So essentially, that basically put me out of commission. I'm going to try and get off that subject, because it is still quite an emotional subject. Obviously, my entire family was traumatised by it, but I think, you know, as spiteful as it sounds, none more than me, because I was the one in control of that car. I was in control of my niece's life. I was in control of Sarah's life. Sarah was drunk. I will say one more thing. Sarah was drunk, and she had her knees up on the dashboard. And just before we pulled off from services, I tried to get home. I told her to take her knees off the dashboard. That would have broken her back. If we'd have been hit with her knees on the dashboard, it would have broken her back. And I think that probably saved her life as well. I don't know. I can't say for sure with Sarah because the impact wasn't on her side. But yeah, I'm going to try and get off that subject now. But yeah, basically that put me out of commission for any kind of manual labour, anything that I was actually going to get a job doing because of a lack of qualifications, I couldn't do. I can't do any heavy lifting. I can't really turn my neck. That is the furthest I can turn my neck without it hurting. Same with that side. That side's a little bit further. That's about there. But that's the furthest I can turn my neck, which is why you'll never see me just suddenly shoot my neck around. If ever I'm turning to talk to anyone, I have to turn my whole body because otherwise it sends a massive shooting pain right the way across my head. But I also suffer with headaches, and I'll go to sleep with a headache, I'll wake up with a headache. So that pretty much put me out of commission for manual labour work. Can't do much heavy lifting. You know, I can still do a fair bit of heavy lifting, but short period of time. And, you know, for doing 8 to 10 hour shift today, that's obviously not really an option, is it? Fast forward to 2018, I got compensation for the car crash. I ended up with nowhere near what I should have got, if in my own opinion, because at the time I hadn't been diagnosed with the neck injury. I'd been diagnosed with the nose injury eventually, but the neck injury, they still didn't care. They hadn't done anything about it. They didn't investigate the headaches. They didn't investigate the fact that I couldn't turn properly. And ultimately, I ended up with £13,000 in compensation, minus £1,000 which I'd had up front, and then the other party paid all of the solicitor fees on top of the compensation they had to pay me. So I ended up with a lump sum of £12,000. By that point, I was also in debt because I'd had to borrow a lot of money. At that time, I was genuinely serious about not getting in any more trouble. Also at that time, just after that, we did find out Sarah was pregnant with Cody, my only son. Well, I do consider the other two my children, but my only biological son, I meant to say. Just after the car crash, we found out Sarah was pregnant with Cody. She wasn't pregnant when we had the car crash, luckily. Actually, the crash might have been 2016 because Cody was born in 2017. Cody was definitely born 22nd of May 2017, so it must have been. But anyway, that's beside the point. We found out that Sarah was pregnant with Cody, so the compensation would have come in 2017, I think. Found out Sarah was pregnant with Cody, so at that point I was absolutely, convinced that I was never going to get in trouble again. My first child was on the way. I had to turn my life around. So I was doing a little bit of work, but really I couldn't do anything other than, little side jobs for people, working on the side and things. Ultimately, I got my compensation. Anyway, Cody was born. Everything was happy. I paid off my debts. I was left with about £7,000. I bought a car, so I was left with about £5,000 because we needed... Pardon me. I bought a car because we needed to get the kids around and things like that, get them to school and things, appointments and whatever. And also I was having physiotherapy at the time as well. And I needed to get to that, and that was in Birmingham, which was quite a way away. So I bought a car. I managed to buy another car, and I also bought a soldering iron. It was a Yiwa 853D because I wanted to kind of give myself something to do to pass the time. So I bought a soldering iron, and I'd do these little hobbies, and eventually I started fixing controllers. And then ultimately, basically, I started fixing controllers, Xbox controllers, PS4 controllers for people on Facebook. And I was earning money that way. So I was getting a little bit of money back here and there. And ultimately what I was doing was I was fixing any controller for £15. And I was getting quite a lot of business. because it was cheap. Basically what I'd do is, if I couldn't figure out the issue, I would essentially just swap the board, give them another board, and then strip the other one down for parts, or try and fix it in my own time. I was selling myself short a little bit, but it was a side hustle. I was making a little bit of money from it, and eventually a guy got in touch with me and said, "Do you want a job in a shop?" And I obviously snapped at the opportunity, and that job was actually, well, there's a guy working there at the minute. The first thing you've got to do is sack him, and you're going to run the entire shop. I'd never run a shop before in my life. I'd worked in shops, but I'd never run a shop before in my life. And yeah, I did that for a while. I worked at the computer shop where he was, he had two shops. He had one in Willenhall, one in Wednesbury. I'm not going to mention the name of the business because there's a bit of bad history between us, but I was working in one of two computer shops. We closed down the one in Willenhall, and I started working in the one in Wednesbury as the on-site technician instead of managing it. And then COVID hit. And again, I was back to square one. No money, no job, nothing. We had to shut down, and that was it. Everyone knows how COVID went. So I started doing it from my garden shed. And that's when I started doing it on YouTube. By that point, I'd already been watching people like Lewis Rossman, Jesse Jones, Tronic Fix, my mate Vince, and also Andrew Paul, as well as another few smaller creators, Northridge Fix, and a few others. So I was already watching those channels, and I was like, you know what? I can do that. And might be able to make some money. I already had a monetized channel on YouTube. I'd been monetized since way back in 2012, 2013, when I was doing some programming tutorials. I wasn't making any money from it. I'd be lucky to get, like, every 6 months or something, I'd get a £60 check from Google. Wasn't making anything from it, but I was like, you know what? I can make some money from this. And at the same time, I can offer repairs in the community. I can start a business doing that. And yeah, that is pretty much it. I obviously started to grow my YouTube channel. That started to get me more business. And then from there, I obviously started doing more YouTube videos, getting paid off YouTube, getting sponsors, and here I am today. So eventually, obviously, everything's gone right for me. I'm not going to say how much I make, because obviously that's fuck all to do with anyone. I make enough to keep myself and my family happy. And ultimately, I've gone from being pretty much this low-life scumbag who didn't give a fuck about going to prison, getting in trouble, stealing, all of that sort of stuff, to having my own family and running my own business, and what I would probably consider a successful business. I'm obviously turning over profit month on month. I make enough to see me and my family right. I work for myself, like I said. I'm a sole trader. I don't answer to no one. I don't have to do as I'm told. If I want to have a lie-in, I'll have a fucking lie-in. I'm not going to worry if I get up at 10 o'clock one morning, unless it's a school day, because then I have to do the school runs. But yeah, if I sleep until 10 o'clock on a Saturday, who cares? I work for myself, and that is the beauty of it. And that is the beauty about running a YouTube channel as well. By running a YouTube channel, I've been able to network with a lot of people. My mate Vince has been an integral part of growing my YouTube channel, as well as Tronic Fix, and some of the bad publicity as well. I've made some mistakes along the way while I've been growing the channel, but we're nearing 90,000 subscribers, and ultimately this is my dream. This is my dream, is to be able to build a community, network, help people along the way, maybe right some of the wrongs that I've done in my past. As I think I've said, I've never really hurt anyone, but I have wronged a few people in my life, and ultimately now, hopefully, I'm at least a little bit making up for that. But I have definitely got a lot better outlook on life now as to what I had in 2012, 2014. I've been through a lot in the past 10 years or so, and I've seen a lot. I've lost people in the past 10 years, I've lost my mum to drink. I've not lost my dad, but I don't see him anymore because of drink. All I have is what I've built around me, my own family. My sisters are obviously great. We're all there for each other. I'll try and support them as much as I can as well. And I have you guys. And that might sound cheesy, but it's what I wake up for every day is my family, and I wake up knowing that I'm at least making some difference in the world. Whether that's saving someone $5 or $10 on, you know, fixing their own thing, or whether it's just giving someone that feel good of fixing their own thing, teaching someone something, learning something myself, teaching my kids to be a good role model, teaching them to work hard, and that perseverance does pay. And ultimately, you can be anything you want to be. You want to be a technician? Go and be a fucking technician. You want to be a firefighter? Go and be a firefighter. Don't let anyone get in your way, because it doesn't matter how many times you get beat up. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It doesn't matter how many times you get crushed against the fucking steering wheel. If you survive it, you can come out better on the other end. And that is ultimately the message that I'm trying to give. I've come out better for it, and so can you. I hope you enjoyed this little story time. I got a little bit emotional. I didn't expect to be honest. I haven't really talked about, you know, the car crash or anything to anyone other than, you know, just saying, oh yeah, I was in a car crash, this is what happened. Didn't really talk about my niece or anything surrounding that, because it's a sore subject, and it will be probably for the rest of my life, but it is what it is. I do hope you enjoyed the video. That is my story. That is how I went from pretty much being a complete scumbag to where I am today. I think successful business owner and a successful content creator, hopefully. And hopefully you guys at least get some value out of these videos. So with that being said, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, all of that good stuff. I really appreciate you staying till the end. And of course, if you do want to support me in any way, there'll be some links in the video description to that as well, but you don't have to. I'll get enough support just by you guys being there and watching the videos, and I do genuinely appreciate it. Thank you all, take care, stay safe. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.